The first Nightmare on Elm Street movie may conceptually be one of the most creative slasher movies ever made. It seems like the kind of idea anybody could come up with, but they just didn't until the 1980s. The idea of a serial killer who can target you in your dreams is pretty terrifying on paper, and the movie itself was a major success. To this day, it's considered to be one of the best slasher movies ever made. There's a reason that they refer to New Line Cinema as the house that Freddy built. The first movie made an astronomical profit of $57.1 million against an initial $1.1 million budget, which that's an insane metric, especially for a horror movie produced and distributed by a non-Big Four production company in the 80s. Naturally, New Line saw franchise potential even before the first movie was released. They purposely fought with Wes Craven to leave it open-ended, hence that random ending where Freddy kills Nancy's mom.
Hey, that dummy can't hurt you. He's not even alive. He's dead.
And Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 was greenlit the same weekend that the original was released, which is really insane to think about, but not surprising. Initially, the concept for Nightmare 2 was to feature a Rosemary's Baby type plot with a teen pregnancy where Freddy would possess the fetus. This idea was thrown out, but the concept of a family having just moved into Springwood was kept, and the pregnancy idea would be revisited in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. Instead of going for the teen pregnancy angle, they used the concept of Freddy possessing an angsty teenage boy, which then kind of evolved into something else before they pulled back on it. Initially, they did offer Wes Craven the chance to return to direct this, but Craven had issues with the script, so they got Jack Shoulder, who did a bunch of crap before this instead. Although Wes Craven was involved in a limited creative capacity. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 also marks composer Christopher Young's first foray into the horror genre. Young would go on to score Hellraiser 1 and 2, Tales from the Hood, Exorcist 3, and The Gift, just to name a few. He would go on to become a rather reputable film composer. Besides that, this movie is well known for one thing, and to quote the Cinema Snob, it's known as Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, the gay one. The main character of Jesse was played by actor Mark Patton, who himself is a homosexual and was closeted at the time. Now, this movie wasn't really written to be a gay movie, from what I'm reading, but apparently it transformed into that during production, likely because the crew found out that Mark Patton was gay. The film's writer, David Chaskin, was apparently not too happy with the gay subtext in the movie, which, believe me, we're gonna see a lot of, and I'm gonna get to that. And Mark Patton gets the feeling that they played up the gay stuff as kind of a rib on him when they found out he was gay. Nevertheless, this movie ended up actually gaining a large following in the gay community.
The gay community.
Now, the movie itself isn't particularly great. It's not horrible, it's far from the worst one in the series, and it does have some genuinely good scenes and moments, but it's pretty skippable if you're doing a marathon. The basic premise is that Jesse moved into Nancy's house from the first movie, and it takes place roughly 5 years after the first movie according to the box, and they played up that the house might be haunted or something. Jesse starts getting visited by Freddy in his dreams, and we get this whole possession inner struggle angle. The possession angle kind of correlates with Jesse's budding relationship with Lisa, the love interest who, trust me, is barely in the movie, as well as with his friendship with Grady. Now, the Grady thing is where a lot of the gay subtext comes from, as well as the gay, sadistic gym teacher, Coach Snyder. It's definitely present, you can definitely feel it, but it feels so downplayed that you'd be forgiven for thinking it was completely accidental, which it may as well have been. Coach Snyder is played by Marshall Bell, who you may recognize from like a modicum of Paul Verhoeven movies, and oddly enough, Jesse's dad is played by Clu Gulager, who you may remember from Return of the Living Dead. Jesse's family is there and present, but they really don't have too much to do with the plot besides his sister. Right off the bat, if you're watching this for the first time, you're gonna notice that this movie takes a much slower pace than the original. The original wasn't an all-out slash fest, but there was a lot more going on in the lead up to the climax, and this movie spends a lot of time with Jesse and his possession angle with Freddy, and it's almost to a fault. Also, outside of Jesse's early encounters with Freddy, we don't get a whole lot with the nightmares. We don't really get any real nightmare sequences that are like fantastical like in the first movie or in the later movies. The only real elaborate dream sequences we get are the beginning and ending school bus dreams. Every other dream sequence in here is very realistic, and the plot itself concerns itself with Jesse trying to fight off Freddy's attempts to possess him and take over his body. Overall, Nightmare on Elm Street Street Part 2 is definitely a lot more of a slow burn psychological horror with some slasher elements. It's a hit and a miss type thing. Like, Mark Patton as Jesse is a solid lead, Lisa is alright, but a little one-dimensional and doesn't get a lot of screen time, and Grady is cool as a best friend character, but again, he's not the focus here. The movie just reeks of production issues and being rushed in general. There's a lot of B-roll that seems to be out of sequence. Prime example of this is when they show Grady and Jesse doing push-ups in the same gym clothes as they did in their earlier scene, indicating that they just shot the same scene from a different angle and put it later in the movie. All in all, the movie does feel really cheap despite having a bigger budget than the first one. And I guess we can chalk that feeling up to it being a studio job. As I said, Wes Craven had very little involvement in this sequel, and they clearly got like a director for hire, had a script written relatively fast after the first movie had come out, and then bam. It's the difference between something that was created and something that was manufactured. This movie feels very manufactured. There's very little passion behind it. At least maybe like 80% of the movie feels like that. But when it actually does try to be a decent movie, it's not half bad. It has a very effective psychological horror moment where Jesse goes into his sister's room while Freddy's possessing him, and you think he's gonna actually kill his sister. And he only barely stops himself from doing so. But then you get something stupid like the exploding parakeet.
It happens sometimes. People just explode.
The movie does have a few really solid scenes in it, but overall, it's not a good movie. What Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 is like a really boring movie with a few scenes that look really good for any sort of highlight reel displaying a best of for the series. When in reality, at best, this is probably the third worst movie in the franchise. The possession concept is good, and while it does deviate from the source material and the rules established in the first one, the concept of Freddy possessing someone does actually get revisited in Freddy vs. Jason, and Freddy's weird ability to exist in the real world simultaneously with the dream world is something that remains with the series. But in all honesty, this movie is completely out of tune with the first movie, and it doesn't particularly fit well with the sequels either. It's that odd little bastard child sequel. We only really get one kill scene in the lead up to the climax, and that's Coach Schneider, after he picks up Jesse at a gay bar in his pajamas, possibly to molest him, and yeah, this is getting weird. There's definitely the feeling of homoeroticism with Snyder's death, like he gets tied up, he gets balls thrown at him, there's a bit of a towel snapping, and yeah. Gotta say though, points for playing that stereotype about the gym teacher being a sex weirdo. That is way too common in real life. I guarantee you everybody has had at least one gym teacher who is just like a pervert. And really, that's putting it delicately. Mark Patton as Jesse does do a good job portraying the inner struggle, but it's like putting a flower garnish on a trash pile. He's good, but the movie he's in isn't particularly well executed. The only thing really cringe coming from Mark Patton's performance is the gay dance sequence. A sequence that Mark Patton himself actually had to re-choreograph because he thought it was too gay. I mean, this dance sequence is pretty gay on its own, so it really makes me think, like, what the fuck did they want him to do before? Nevertheless, Mark Patton's performance is solid, and it's really sad that it was wasted in a movie that was rushed to production, but there is one saving grace to the movie overall, and that is the final act. Jesse finds that while Lisa's trying to seduce him, he is overwhelmed by Freddy's influence. It's felt more and more, and he goes to Grady for help. Clearly some sort of gay allegory for his love for Grady, and eventually Freddy manages to rip himself out of Jesse's body. crossing over from the dream world inside Jesse into the real world. And to this day, it's a really good effect. How he just like rips out of Jesse and how the skin just drops and like just like the whole lead up to it. This is like the highlight of the movie in terms of special effects. Like if there's ever a reason to sit through this movie that is quite frankly a very long bore, this is it. I would go as far as to say that this is probably like a top 3 scene in the entire franchise. I'm gonna get into my story of when I first saw this movie like a little bit later into the video, but like I was really bored of this movie throughout the whole thing. And then this happened and I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. There's a reason literally every highlight package showing like the highlight moments from this franchise includes this scene and another scene that I'm gonna talk about later. Because this scene is just that damn good. Too bad I can't say that for the rest of the movie. Of course, after Freddy violently bursts from Jesse's body, he kills Grady, and then we get the lead in to the other highlight scene of this movie. Actually, I'd go ahead and say there's 3 highlight sequences. The opening dream, because it just looks really nightmarish, and like they got everything right with that, and then the Freddy coming out of Jesse's scene, and then finally the pool party massacre scene. Jesse goes back to Lisa's party, which I probably should have explained that, yeah, the whole set piece for the end here is that Lisa's having a pool party, and he turns into Freddy again. He's chasing Lisa around trying to kill her. Honestly, like the little action here is good, and Robert Englund's performance is really good. Like keep in mind, this is when Freddy was still allowed to be like scary without being funny, and it's definitely like, it's a hectic scene. The inner struggle stuff is like, it's interesting because they never really do anything like that again in this series, because Freddy never really possesses anybody like this again.
Kill me, Lisa. Please kill me.
And we never really get Freddy shown as this sadistic again in the series, because after this they started to give him more wisecracks and one-liners. But it's a pretty powerful sequence. I do like how like they kind of do a little plot armor on Lisa, because yes, Freddy is inhabiting Jesse's body and Jesse does still have a little bit of control. But I guess in a way, Lisa not being featured as much kind of actually works, because like you wouldn't think she's protected. There is a legitimate sense of danger here with the Lisa character just because she wasn't featured as heavily, because she wasn't the main protagonist. You could be forgiven for thinking, hey, this movie might actually go there and kill the quote-unquote final girl. But Freddy himself is not immune to the power of love.
I love you, Lisa.
Jesse, help!
And then he ends up at the party, and the massacre at the pool party is probably one of the greatest scenes in the entire franchise. It's just a shame that it's in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Now, this does and doesn't go against a rule established in the first. In the first movie, it's established that when Freddy crosses over into the real world, he's just a normal dude. But during this pool party scene, you can see him clearly using his dream world abilities in the real world. The giant explosions, the boiling pool water, and overall just kind of warping reality, which does lead to one of the best shots in the franchise.
You are all my children now.
I just want to say that for all this movie's faults, Robert Englund kills it once again as Freddy Krueger.
You've got the body. I've got the brain.
And this was the last time we actually got to like see him play it as a horror character, because the next movie, while keeping some of the horror elements of the character, started to lean into wisecracking Freddy. Nightmare 2 carries over the unworldly voice, and while Freddy isn't in it a lot up until the ending, Robert Englund does put on a performance whenever he's on screen, and it's a performance that's almost on the same level as the first movie. And the way they designed Freddy in this, like, he looks slimy and wet for some reason, and he just looks really, like, gross. There's like more ick here than he already had. And to think that they actually wanted to recast Freddy. Apparently they wanted to cut some corners on the budget, and they figured they could just have Freddy be a faceless killer like Jason or Michael Myers. So they hired some no-name to portray him and just threw a rubber mask on him, but then they quickly realized that they fucked up. There's one scene in the movie where the other actor, who to this day has remained nameless, plays Freddy, and he just awkwardly kind of hobbles into frame like he's Frankenstein's monster or some shit. It's like painfully obvious that it's not right, Robert Englund. And I'd honestly like to know who the fuck they got, because it would be really funny if it was someone who ended up actually being in something later. But alas, New Line Cinema realized their mistake and went and got Robert Englund back. The wrap-up after the pool party has Freddy running to the factory from the end of RoboCop, and we have Lisa kind of take over as the lead because Freddy obviously has Jesse's body. Lisa goes through some nightmare mindfuck shit in the factory, which is like really unsettling, but it's like more of like a haunted house type unsettling. It's like it kind of takes you out of it. Like, what? Why? But then she manages to find Freddy and reach Jesse within him, which causes Freddy to explode for some reason.
It happens sometimes. People just explode.
And they live happily ever after, even though they don't really, because it's a slasher movie. There's always going to be a sequel hook.
It's okay. It's all over.
All in all, I think Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is a movie that could have been really good, but it just didn't turn out very good. It was rushed. Honestly, it feels like a chore to sit through. The movie bears no actual weight on the rest of the franchise. It never gets any direct references. The only thing even close that gets to a direct reference in a sequel is at the very end of the very last movie in the franchise, in which clips from it are shown during a musical montage highlighting the entire series. And while some of the powers Freddy displayed in here are used to a degree in future movies, it's so removed from the first movie and the following movies that it doesn't really fit. Now, I have a theory about Nightmare on Elm Street 2's placement that is, it's just a fun thing. It's not anything concrete. It's just something fun I like to think of here. Now, supplemental materials and Nancy's journal and everything place Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 is taking place 5 years after the first movie. I'm going to chalk that up to lack of foresight and a combination of the movie itself being rushed and lack of direction for the series. This was only the first ever sequel. They didn't know where they were going with this. Now, I mentioned Freddy crossing into the real world as something that does kind of get revisited, like the idea of him crossing into the real world like with his powers. Basically, a fun way that I like to look at Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is that it takes place between 5 and 6. Hear me out. In contrast to when he gets pulled into the real world by Nancy, he doesn't have any powers. But in this movie, when he forces his way in through Jesse, he seemed to be able to manipulate reality in the real world as if it was the dream world. And as we know, by the time of Freddy's Dead, he's kind of done something like that to Springwood. He's cut it off from the rest of the world, he's killed all of the kids, and everything in Springwood where, like, in that period of time is just weird and warped. So I'm thinking Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is actually the prelude to Freddy taking over Springwood in the real world and butchering all the teenagers. Like, Freddy jumps to the real world, he kills everybody including Jesse, and basically after he does that, that's just him, he starts wiping out all the kids in Springwood. Which also means, if you do subscribe to this theory, that at this point in time, Jacob from Part 5 is still alive, because there's the whole thing where Jacob is actually John Doe from Freddy's Dead. That also means at some point between Part 5 and Part 2, based on this theory, Alice was killed by Freddy. And to explain Nancy's journal that they use as a plot device, which doesn't make any sense because we never see Nancy writing a journal in the first movie, I think that's actually just Nancy, after her death in Part 3, trying to kind of warn Jesse from the dream world or from the afterlife or whatever. I don't know. It's a working theory. Maybe it just makes it seem a little bit better than like a plot convenient ass pull to connect the two movies, but I don't know. My basic theory is that after Part 5, Freddy managed to kind of get his power back after he was defeated by Alice, and this depicts Freddy coming into the real world and taking over Springwood, setting up the town state in the 6th movie. It's just a headcanon. You might not like it, you might like it, you don't have to agree with it. It doesn't work perfectly. Like, there's the whole thing, like, if we had to go with this theory, then we'd have to just ignore the blatant mid-80s design of the movie. We'd have to assume that Part 3 takes place, you know, roughly 4 to 5 years after Part 1 because Nancy was in medical school. And then we would have to place this after Part 5, which could take place up to, I don't know, like 10 years after the original. And yeah, I want to go back to the mid-80s aesthetic that I mentioned. Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is so mid-80s that it hurts. It's almost to a fault. The fashion, the design of the house, and the overall feel of the movie. The gay dance scene definitely adds to this. It contrasts with the first one because the first one does seem kind of timeless. Like, you can tell it's an 80s movie, but it doesn't, like, blast you with the 80s. 3, 4, and 5 are definitely MTV generation movies, but again, it doesn't really draw too much attention to it. Nightmare 2 feels like it's drawing attention to its mid-80s aesthetic. Whether on purpose or not, I don't know, but this one just seems blatantly 80s compared to the rest of the series. As a movie, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 was not nearly as successful as the first movie. They lost the plot and isolated any fans of the first movie, and you can't really blame them because they really didn't know what they were going for. It was still a finding their footing era for the series. But despite its inferiority to the movie that came before it, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 still made about $30 million against its $3 million budget, so it wasn't a failure. But in terms of the mainline Nightmare on Elm Street series, it's the lowest grossing, and fans of the franchise typically look down on it for being slower and not featuring the standard tropes that the series would feature. But it did kind of garner a cult following within the franchise's fan base. First and foremost, the movie does have a large following in the gay community.
The gay community.
Because of its gay subtext and the idea that Jesse is a closeted homosexual, as well as due to the fact that the lead is played by a gay man. Many gay horror fans were able to relate their kind of teenage closeted years with the character of Jesse. Which is kind of funny that Mark Patton is like a gay horror icon because of this movie, when you look back and you realize that when they were casting for this movie, there were 2 names that were actually like on the short list for the lead. One of those was a young Christian Slater, and the other one was a young Brad Pitt. Seeing how Mark Patton's career, it's probably best that neither of those 2 did get the part, because they probably would have never become as big as they did. And yeah, Mark Patton has stated that the movie had negative effects on his career as an actor, as it came out during the AIDS epidemic when homophobia was at a height, and while he was closeted at the time, people started to kind of suspect that he might be gay, and they didn't want to really give him any roles. But at least he can take with him the fact that he will always be associated with one of the most popular horror franchises ever made, and that he has like a cult following around his work in this movie. In fact, it's a cult following that is so strong that he even made a documentary about his life and career surrounding this movie. And to this day, he can be found at horror conventions. Now, outside of the gay community,
The gay community.
the rest of the following seems to appreciate the more slow burn nature and psychological aspects of this movie, and the fact that Freddy still gets to be a scary character. We still do get creepy Freddy in this movie, and it's the last time we really get him until arguably New Nightmare, but I don't like New Nightmare. I look at Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 and see what they were trying to do here, and I think had it been a bit more fine-tuned, it could have probably been on par with the first one a little more. But I think it has the unfortunate distinction of being sandwiched between the 2 best movies in the franchise. The first movie is considered to be one of the best slasher movies ever made, and the third movie is considered to be one of the best slasher sequels ever made. And the series owes its success to the movie that came before and after, leaving Part 2 mostly as an afterthought to casual fans of the series. I have a little bit of a personal experience with Nightmare on Elm Street 2. It's kind of funny. Like, we're gonna go back to 2003 again when Freddy vs. Jason was in theaters. You know, I'd seen parts 1 and 3. Part 1 because my friend Jordan, rest in peace, gave me the tape, and Part 3 because my cousins just decided to rent Part 3 one day. Much like any kid in that era, I was full swing into my 80s horror phase. You know, they were showing these movies everywhere. You were renting them every weekend if you could actually get your hands on them, because half the time they were taken off the shelves at Jumbo. And just everybody was doing their part to kind of cash in on the success of Freddy vs. Jason, including TV stations, both cable and broadcast. Many of these stations got the rights to show these movies, like during whatever blocks they could show them on, because they knew, hey, Freddy vs. Jason out, people are going to see that this movie's on, they're going to be like, oh, let's rewatch it, or let's watch it for the first time so that we can go see Freddy vs. Jason. So I'm sitting in my cousin's basement one day, you know, it's Saturday, I'm flipping channels, and I see that Fox 29 is airing Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I want to iterate here that Fox 29 is the Buffalo affiliate. We did get Buffalo channels in Toronto, we still do, I think. I don't know, I don't really have TV anymore. But I don't know what I was expecting, because they were airing Nightmare on Elm Street 2 on a local broadcast channel. I was aware that TV airings, especially on non-cable channels during a daytime slot, like this is like 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday, would likely censor movies like this, but I decided, you know what, let's just watch it anyway, because what else was I gonna do at 2 p.m. on a Saturday? I just remember like watching this movie and being bored out of my wits. I did not like it at all. Even when it did get to the killing, they censored the shit out of it. So I had a bad impression of this movie from an early age. And while I didn't pick up on the gay subtext because I was young, there was something about the movie that seemed a little homoerotic. I just didn't know what homoerotic meant at the time. And at times I found myself laughing at how corny the movie was. Like how it cuts from Schneider's death to the cops with Jesse saying they found him roaming the freeway naked, and then it just never gets addressed again in the movie. I don't know. It was bad. I laughed at it. My cousin laughed at it, and then I think I changed the channel like partway through.
Good evening. Does this belong to you?
Yes, it is. My son.
We found him out on the highway wandering around. He was naked.
Later on, I would rewatch it and learn to appreciate more of the movie, but it's usually still a skip when I rewatch the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It's telling that the most fun I've had with this movie was placing it haphazardly in another part of the franchise timeline, because yeah, it still does not fit as the second movie. Nevertheless, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 isn't like terrible, it's just not particularly great either. I'd say if you've never seen it and you want to go through the series, you should watch it at least once. And if it's been a while since you've seen it and you're looking to rewatch the franchise, you can have a little fun and try to watch it between parts 5 and 6 using my theory. But I honestly wouldn't judge you during a Halloween rewatch if you decide to just jump from part 1 to part 3. The fucking timeline certainly did that. After the release of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, there would be a little bit of a break between sequels. In 1987, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 The Dream Warriors came out, Wes Craven was brought back as a producer, and Heather Langenkamp from the first movie returned as the Nancy character. And The Dream Warriors would pretty much define the franchise moving forward. And as I said, it's considered to be one of, if not the best slasher sequels ever made, but we'll talk about that one when the time comes. What are your thoughts on Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2? Let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, drop a comment, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell icon, etc. And I suppose I should wish Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 a happy 40th anniversary. See you later.
Yeah, it's gonna be alright. Yeah, I'm here to help you.
Help yourself, fucker!